Hello. I hope I'm audible. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Metamorphosis Medcast, organized by DMC Club UK. As always, thank you very much for Dr. Atikur for organizing this wonderful opportunity for us resident doctors to gain some much valuable insight and one-to-one information, tips, and tricks about how we can avail all the opportunities available when we are thinking about getting into higher specialty trainee. And I would like to welcome everyone who's joining from different parts of the world with us. If you could drop a message or say hi, that would be amazing. So, let me introduce myself first. My name's Ima Islam, and I'm currently working as an IMT1, which is internal medicine training, and I'm in the first year in NHS under Wessex Deanery. Today, we have a very brilliant guest with us who has recently started their ST4 journey in endocrinology. Let's all welcome Dr. Shoayed Sarwar.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Emma, for a warm introduction. And thank you, everyone involved and Metamorphosis for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for agreeing to spend your weekend afternoon with us. I can also see Dr. Nadia Islam is also here. So thank you so much for being here and giving us this platform to just have a good catch up, a good old Deshi catch up, and gain some valuable insights about higher specialty training. I can see that I can't see anyone else joining in at the moment, so maybe we'll wait for one more minute and then we'll just get the balls rolling.
Emma, can I check with you? My voice is audible?
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect,
All right.
crystal clear. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Hello, Ima and Shoaib. Thank you for, we're glad that you both are here. We're looking forward to get some valuable information today from the session. And you're on live on different platforms. So if you want to
Okay,
start, you can go ahead. All right.
amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, so uh, how would you like me to address you, Dr. Shoaib Sarwar?
Shoaib is fine. Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you so much. And for the audience, I might address Dr. Shoaib Sarwar as Shoaib Bhai because
No, no,
we
Shoaib is fine. For
are
don't
you
worry.
absolutely sure? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Shoaib. So if you could walk us through your journey in the NHS so far so that we can get a bit more insight into how you ended up in this ST4 position.
So it goes back in the year 2021, April, when I started my NHS journey. So it's long time has passed already. So it's already 4.5 years has passed. So the I joined. So I'm from DMC K67. I did my graduation 2015. Then I was in the FCPS training, which is GIM training in Bangladesh, and then I got my registration, GMC registration, through passing MRCP membership, and that's how I got my registration in year 2021 and joined NHS in on the month of April. So I joined in in London as a clinical fellow in the trust is Queen's Hospital, Romford. And so my first post in that hospital was as a clinical fellow in stroke medicine. So so as an IMG, I was a new starter, and my goal before coming to UK, I had interest in two specialties, particularly, if being honest. That was diabetes and endocrine, and other one was neurology. So I was not so sure that stroke medicine is different from neurology. So I just took my first offer, my first interview in London, and joined BHRUT Trust in London. That's how I started my journey as a clinical fellow. I would like to mention something here that although I had membership, I thought it would be better just to start as a junior clinical fellow. So I started as a junior clinical fellow just to get tuned to the NHS system, and then I slowly changed my role to senior clinical fellow, and I was like what we call med regging, like a medical registrar, as a senior clinical fellow for last 2 years before joining the ST4 in acute medicine. So basically, I was not in any active role in diabetes and endocrine. So you can question that I have not worked in diabetes endocrine in NHS particularly, but I have worked in Bangladesh in diabetes endocrine where my inspiration came from. So and then I signed off my competencies by alternative pathway rather than going through IMT, and that's how I started ST4 this August in north of Scotland, and my hospital is Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, and I'm just in my second month. That's my journey.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if anyone's joining in from back home, and when I say home, I'm also from the same medical college that our guest graduated from, and that's in Bangladesh. So we learn a lot about, I think Aberdeen is a popular suture in medicine as well. So I think people might be quite familiar with the hospital, or at least the name. So that's quite nice. And I think we are going to break your journey down by bits and bits, okay? So it's great that, for me personally, it's wonderful that you ended up in a specialty where you did not have any particular ex experience or NHS experience per se. So I think a good number of us, be it British medical graduates or international medical graduates, we will probably have certain specialities in our mind where we want to build our career in which, but then we might not get the opportunity to work in that certain specialty. So we'll try and squeeze out all the details from you
Yep.
and all the suggestions from you in that regard. So you've mentioned that you did a bit of training back home as well in your home country before coming to the UK. So diabetes and endocrine was part of it. Did you do any other rotations, or how long was your postgraduate training career before making the switch?
So in Bangladesh, after post foundation, so you become part of GIM training pathway, what we call internal medicine, and what we call FCPS in our country. And as part of the GIM training pathway, you can choose to opt in to work in any particular specialty you want. So as part of that 4 year training program, I chose to work in GIM ward. I chose to work in neurology, endocrinology, respiratory medicine, and I finished my 4 years. And that time I already had passed my MRCP membership, and I just made up my mind which are the specialties I want to work. And out of my 6 months rotation, I had neurology and diabetes endocrinology particularly, and that's why I was having internal debate like which pathway I should go for here.
Right. Okay. So 2021, you came to the NHS. When did you sort of know that you actually don't want to complete your training in your home country, or how early did you start planning to move to the NHS, if I could ask?
Yeah, so 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 I can give a brief summary. So I passed my PACES exam on 25th of March. So that was the 1 week before the pandemic
Yeah.
closed the border for UK centers for any overseas examinees. So I
Mm,
was literally the last batch of people who came from overseas to sit for PACES in UK centers.
mm,
So at that time, so I was near at the end of my GIM training in Bangladesh. So I had the option whether I can stay further 1 year. There
mm,
was something like dissertation publication relating to GIM FCPS pathway in Bangladesh. So I just opted that I should not do any further delay because my ultimate destination was NHS. So I did not want to pursue FCPS in Bangladesh. Rather, I just opted for GMC registration and came.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's very good. So it wasn't like it was a decision that was hastily made. You sort of
No.
knew the reason you probably sat for MRCP was probably because you wanted that transition.
Yeah, so if I'm being more clear to you, so MRCP was my ultimate goal and GMC registration was my ultimate goal. And
Okay.
I thought being part of GIM training pathway, FCPS training in Bangladesh, that was a good background for me to practice my clinical skills of PACES. So I was just part of those 4 years training program to build up myself for the PACES exam, if I'm being more clear. So I did
Yeah.
part one, part two, written from Bangladesh, and I owe myself to the FCPS training program in Bangladesh that I had good developed good clinical skills for the PACES exams. So that was not my main goal, but that helped me a lot to become part.
Amazing, amazing. So it's a very common question for those who want to come to the NHS. Should we pick PLAB or should we pick MRCP? So doesn't matter what you pick. I think it's always variable. It depends on your personal circumstances, but try and focus on your clinical expertise and clinical acumen and build your portfolio in that way so that even when you make that transition through whichever way you are going to ultimately you have that in your back burner. You have that clinical experience to bring forward and show in your job applications and interviews. Right. Okay. So in 2021 you started as junior clinical fellow and then you moved to senior clinical fellow, and other than stroke, which other
Yeah.
rotations did you do?
So when I was in stroke, in very few months, I found out that I am not part of medicine particularly because
Right.
stroke they don't do medical on calls. They do thrombolysis on calls, and stroke is completely separate from neurology. So my next thinking was I need to be part of medical on calls for my competencies, for my portfolios, because stroke is just like a niche specialty, just like ITU. It's not
Mm,
part of medical specialty. I mean broadly.
mm,
And then in the same trust, after 6 months, I switched to rotational clinical fellow,
mm,
still as a junior clinical fellow. So which was like a 6 monthly rotations of specialties I choose. So I chose the specialties as part of rotations. Initially was geriatric medicine, and
mm,
then I had cardiology 6 months, and then I had acute medicine 6 months, which was my third rotation. So I was nearly at the end of 2 years as a rotational clinical fellow, having worked in stroke, geriatrics, cardiology, and acute medicine. 2 years as a junior clinical fellow experience. So, on being my perspective, I wanted to be used to medical on calls before stepping up as a senior clinical fellow. At the
right.
same time, my supervisor was pushing me, it's too late. I mean, you are getting nearly 2 years. You have MRCP 2 years back, and you have four specialty
Mm,
experience. You just step up. And then I stepped up year 2023 Jan. So that's 2.5 years back. I was the senior clinical fellow or medical registrar
right.
in acute medicine.
Right. Okay. And the reason I asked that question was because now when I'm thinking about higher specialty training and entry into higher specialty training, you obviously have to do your application, you have to build your portfolio, and you have to have certain rotations ticked off.
Yep.
So from your experience, you obviously got that ticked off because you opted for that acute medicine rotation. You opted for that cardiology rotation, which is great. Since you've already mentioned that you did not go through IMT, which is a more, if I want to put it, maybe certain way to get those specialty check
Yep.
boxes ticked off like ITU and geriatrics, it's probably a bit more uh, uncertain to arrange an ITU rotation or things like that. So how did you get that signed off then?
Yeah, so it's very subjective to be honest. So when I sat with my supervisor, so I opened up my portfolio and I just gone through my experience post foundation. And I told my supervisor, look, this is what I have worked before joining NHS. So I had worked ITU in a private setting, like outside my like our GIM training in Bangladesh. I also worked in a private setting for 1 year in ITU. So I showed that as my competency that I had 1 year ITU rotation, and my supervisor was happy to sign the alternative competency form. So provided I shown the evidence. So it's very subjective depending on that particular consultant who you will discuss your portfolio and you will show your evidences that can still be out of NHS
Mm,
and your IT rotations. Geriatrics is not a well-established specialty in Bangladesh, in particularly in my country. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it all about your supervisor. You're happy with your, I mean, clinical abilities based on your previous experiences. But I want to mention something here very important. If you go to the PHST document library, they have updated the alternative competency form again, 4th of September, which is like 3 weeks
mm,
back. So every year there is always a new update to the alternative competency form. And this year, the new update is somewhere I mean, no, so it's a 9 page form. So in the number section 5.1 to 5.5 somewhere, there is a new boxes which shows the person who is signing the whole form, competency form,
mhm,
also needs to make sure in that box there is a name of the geriatric consultant name, and there is
mm,
a rotation or location and dates of the geriatric medicine. And also there is the next, and it shows that you need to mention 4 years, geriatric placement, locations, dates, and name geriatrician of those 4 months working under geriatric uh, geriatrician. And at the same time, next point is at least 3 months you must work in ITU,
mm,
location, dates, and named ITU clinician. It's so the form has changed in a way. Previously, you had to convince your supervisor showing your portfolio that yes, you have worked, and your supervisor is happy seeing your portfolio and happy to sign off every points. But now few particular sections have to be signed by particularly geriatrician and ITU, which is a very demanding, a bit different, uh,
mm.
much more difficult to obtain comparing to before, in my opinion. So
Wow.
that's why the new thing has come just 3 weeks back, and it's lots of new ideas how to work on that.
Right. Okay. No, that's really, really helpful. Thank you so much. So, audience, you heard it first here. So, the best thing to do always, always, instead of we'll always ask our seniors or ask our friends and our acquaintances, but always refer back to the official websites for the latest information. So it's very easy if you want to take a look into that when you're at home. You have to write PHST. So that's P for Papa, H for Hotel, S for Sienna, and T for Tango, and then recruitment.org.uk. That's the website. Or if you Google, I think if you Google PHSD recruitment UK or NHS, it should come up. And then you go to the document library and then look for the alternative certificate to enter into higher specialty training. And then you should have all the details available. Um, I think that's a very good point for whoever who's not doing a formal training post. I think it will probably be a bit more difficult to get these things signed off now. But if you are if you have the luxury of time, if you're able to plan ahead, maybe in certain medical colleges or medical universities of different countries, you will probably have a geriatrician, and maybe your current supervisor can have a chat with them to see if there can be some sort of an understanding where you may still be able to be, take like you may get that ticked off. Because in general internal medicine intakes and whatnot, we see many patients who would meet that geriatric criteria anyway, in stroke and all those many other specialities. So you can
Yep.
try and think about the alternate pathways for signing off alternate competencies, I guess.
Yep. Also, it
Okay.
was helpful in a way. I worked in stroke particularly, and that's how my supervisor was convinced that that's close to geriatrics experience as well. Also, I had separate geriatrics placement anyway on
Okay.
top of that. And this is particularly important who is not going through IMT, by the way, the last point that we have been discussing.
Yeah, yeah, just to be clear, because we said earlier that in IMT you'll have to have geriatrics rotation for I think at least 4 months, and then ITU rotation it changes, but it's generally like 12 weeks ish. So again, 3 months. So you'll have to have that to complete your internal medicine training anyway. But if you're doing alternate competencies and you're a clinical fellow who has to arrange their rotations, you can have a chat with your consultant and see how they advise you to best deal with that situation. So ITU done, geriatrics done. The next question is outpatient exposure. How did you manage exposure
Yeah,
to clinics? Because this can be a point of contention for clinical fellows
yeah,
that trainees get priority and they sometimes cannot manage time for outpatient clinics.
yep. So, so it, it excuse me. So it depends on the particular specialty you are currently working at. So when I was working at the acute medicine, so acute medicine has separate clinic called ambulatory clinic.
Mhm.
So I was working actively for 2 years in the ambulatory clinic setting anyway. At the same time, saying that whenever you're changing rotation, like respiratory, or you have particular clinic in that specialty, but at the same time where when you are trying to build up your portfolio, uh, trying to convince that you are committed to that particular specialty. So for example, I have applied in diabetes and endocrinology. I'm ST4 now. So having worked in the 2 years in the acute medicine, I also had the time out by talking to my supervisor in the department that every week in a particular half day, PM or AM, I need to go to the endocrine clinic. So it was just an understanding or support from my supervisor that I had the time off to go to the clinic even for 2 hours, 4 hours, but it shows that I have been involved in the outpatient setting in that particular specialty I'm applying for, and shows my commitment and clinical experience outpatient setting. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Uh, so you have to be proactive and plan and always discuss things with your clinical supervisor, with your educational supervisor. And sometimes we might be hesitant to ask for certain opportunities, but that wouldn't help anyone. That wouldn't help you. And the worst thing that your educational supervisor can say is no, and then you can discuss with other consultants or you can explore that avenue, but always try and ask about if you can sort of chuck some time off when the ward is well staffed or when you have a clinic placement scheduled anyway. Just go into your desired specialty. Okay, that's very helpful. Now, as an as someone who only recently started IMT and who does not have much exposure about or much knowledge about higher specialty training, I feel endocrinology or DNE, diabetes and endocrine, it's probably a bit academically heavy as well. It's not just clinical, there's a lot of research going on. So, in terms of creating your portfolio, what did you do in terms of audit, presentations, publications, and what do you think you could have done differently to make your portfolio be much more vibrant?
So first of all, I mean, if you go to the PHST website, you can show the points like 8 or 9 categories where you have to build up your portfolio. and that we already mentioned some of it, like the teaching, publications, QIPs, and there are many others like MRCP qualifications, postgrad qualification. But I mean, particular to your specialty that you are going to apply for, you can show your commitment in the form of QIP, publication, teaching, and posters,
Mhm.
and clinic involvements, conference attendance, and in many ways. And so I mean, in broad general sense, um, every IMGs makes the same mistakes, that is not to plan ahead. So this is the first time I applied ST4 program and I got into. But the year before, I tried to apply by saying that I just opened during the application period, and then I opened that, oh my god, I have to do that, which I
Um,
never knew, I mean, which I was not fully aware about, and I did not prep myself I mean, way ahead. So I was like, no, there is no chance, there is no point of applying, because there are certain portfolio scoring cutoff you need to make.
mhm.
So everyone makes the same mistake, not to plan ahead and not to understand the pathway, that you need to make certain cutoff scoring to get into. So you asked me how did I develop my points in those categories.
Yeah.
So so my biggest advice, that everyone thinks that you have to work in that specialty to get into that specialty, which is wrong. So you don't need to work in actively in diabetes and endocrine to get ST4 in diabetes endocrine. So you have to pick somewhere, you have the wide opportunities. You just have to sell yourself, and you just have to develop yourself in a way from your work setting. So for example, as an acute medicine registrar, I mean, in your department, you can do QIP in any project, any specialties related. So I did my QIPs. So there was particular specific consultant who was my supervisor, who was both acute med and also outpatient endocrine clinic. So he does both. So I was heavily involved with him in developing my portfolio. So we did a QI together, and we repeated the cycles. And that was endocrinopathy related to immunotherapy. So the QIP is solely based on endocrine. So that shows my commitment, number one. Then coming to poster presentation, you have to ideally I advise you should be member of that specialty. Like I was a member of endocrine and diabetes society, so you know all the upcoming conferences of the year, so you can plan ahead. How can you um, present your posters in that conference and get the as much as number? It's all about getting numbers. And at the same time, publications, it doesn't necessarily have to be, every point doesn't necessarily have to be based on only endocrine or diabetes, but you have to touch every categories to get points. So you have to get a publication that doesn't necessarily have to be diabetes or endocrine. As long as you have done a publication, you get the points. But overall, my advice is that you have to have something to show commitment to your specialty. You can't tick every boxes, just like I have done QIP, I have done publication, I have done teaching, posters, but none of those related to endocrine or diabetes. Then you can't sell yourself in the interview or in the shortlisting. So the most important commitments, I would say, when you go for ST4 training program are the QIPs. So ideally you should do a QIP. I mean, focusing on your own specialty that you're applying for. At the same time, uh, you should do a poster or be part of conference publications. So those things that shows your commitment of the clinical aspect. You always should demonstrate that you have done clinic settings in that. So for my specialty is quite outpatient heavy, like a clinic setting. So I had to show that I am tuned to do referrals clinics, because my supervisor made the setup for me so that I can go to the clinic or join every particular day of the week to join seeing the referrals.
Mm. Right. Wow. That's really, really helpful. And just in case someone for some reason is not able to manage anything in their desired speciality that they want, maybe sometimes what you can do is also arrange a taster week to show that, see, I'm committed to the speciality. So I do not have this rotation by default, but I arranged this week of placement where I learn more about the speciality, and that shows my commitment. So at the end of the day, as Shoaib said, about selling yourself and connecting to the dots and planning ahead, of course. Yeah, that's very, very important. A quick detour question. So, you've mentioned initially that there were two specialities that
Yep.
you had your heart set onto. One of them was neurology and the other one was DNE. So for ST4 or higher specialty training, did you apply for DNE only or did you also apply for neurology? And if you did, how did you connect, like in terms of QUIP and all the other points, how did you connect them all together?
So, so when I really understood the pathway last year, November, that I already planned ahead that what needs to be done to get into ST4, what points or tick boxes you need to make. At that point, I already knew that I'm so much into endocrine and diabetes already because I have a supervisor who is both acute and diabetes endocrine. And so I was so much into commitments or tick boxes everywhere into endocrine. So initially in last November, I was thinking my portfolio is well suited for which specialty. So the number one is obviously diabetes endocrine.
Yeah.
Number two was acute medicine. So I had few staffs to show competence commitments towards acute medicine. But neurology wise, I had none. Although I already had so much deep into endocrine, and so I forgot totally of
All right. Okay. Okay.
neurology. Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
and also to mention the last point you mentioned that I also had a tester week myself,
Ah,
and that was
okay.
last year March. And that was in the St. Parts, so that's a very good trust to work in
Yeah.
London.
Very popular trust. Yeah.
Yeah, so so that's how I mean I only so answering to your questions, I only and only applied to endocrine, and this was my
Okay.
first time applying.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was so much, this is in a way stubbornness, maybe, I don't know. I was so passionate about my
You're focused. Yeah.
focused. I was so passionate and focused towards my specialty. But in general, everyone, I mean, there is no right or wrong, but everyone would tell you that, oh, it's not safe. Don't go for only one specialty. At least apply for four, five, or apply for two or three. Then you can compare your options based on the ranking of every specialties and long listing and short listing interview. Don't keep your options closed. But I was so focused, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's very variable from one person to another because sometimes like let's say even if you were let's say you got into cardiology and you don't want to do cardiology, there's probably no point in doing that. But if you want like uh probably mock interviews for free, maybe you can do that. It was the suggestion of one of our previous guests that what they did for practicing in a high pressure scenario was apply for a couple of specialities that he or she knew that they did not want to get into, but because there will be that pressure, they will
Yep.
know the clinical scenarios and the management scenarios, and they'll try and, perform their way through that.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
a
will
good
probably
trick in a way, but if you are
yeah.
not passionate, I mean, you don't.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. Some people can consider it, it's
yeah,
just not worthwhile. Let's
yeah.
just save my energy and focus onto my
Yeah.
disease.
I'm not like 90%, I'm like 100% into, and I won't swap my specialty for anything else. Yeah.
Right. Great. Which builds to my question. Why did you choose to train uh, in diabetes and endocrine in the NHS? What were the points for it? What drove you towards it?
To be honest, it very much comes down to your own preference and personality. So having worked in Bangladesh, a few specialties I already worked, and in NHS as well. So I went literally to the most specialties, if I'm not wrong, excluding hematology or gastro, or like I had an overview
Mm,
of the most specialties, and so in a way I had a tester of every specialties,
mm,
and the only two specialties stood out. I already told, yeah, diabetes and endocrine, and also neurology, and then I was so there. This is my own preference only. So I was basing that I would like to work in diabetes and endocrine only because I think it's something like a problem solving approach. Like it very much I mean, related to your physiology and numbers and problem solving, and that's why you can correlate why neurology as well. So
mm,
neurology and endocrine, they are both like problem solving specialties to me, and 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 I also consider endocrine diabetes as a very good work-life balance as well. And I love to work in the clinic setting. So
right.
I love my tester week. So I already knew I would enjoy this specialty forever. And something I can add on to it, it might not make sense. I am a I'm a chess player as well, so I play
Right.
competitive chess, and I mean chess is all about numbers, and I think endocrine in many ways is related to numbers as well. So since my childhood, I wanted to be a mathematician. So I
Right.
am always so much obsessed with numbers, and
Mm,
endocrine is all invisible numbers to me.
right. Wow. That's a great answer. That's really good. Okay. Fantastic. So we've talked a bit about uh, sort of pre-application journey and what are the things to look out for in your higher specialty training application. I don't think we've missed out on anything major. Now, moving on, although the application is very, very important, and without scoring well, you wouldn't really be able to move on to the next step, which is the interview. However, I think maximum portion of the marks for your application process belongs to the interview section, isn't it?
Yep.
Isn't it like 80% probably?
So I'm not sure whether it's right to say that. I have spoken to many colleagues who has gone through IMTs, and I've gone through ST4. So in IMTs, the cutoff scoring is very strict. Like you
Mm,
have to have a very high cutoff scoring to
yeah.
get to interviews. But while in ST4, I felt like that is it's comparatively a bit easier to get
Mm,
long listed. I mean, the
right.
cutoff scoring like we have out of 40.
Mm,
So so out of 40, I had 28. So
right.
anyone who my colleagues even had 21.
Right.
So one of my colleagues 21 out of 40 got longlisted for endocrine.
Okay.
And the lowest I heard one colleague was 19 of 40
Okay.
also got longlisted for endocrine.
Mm,
So saying that it's not very strict sometimes to get longlisted, but shortlisting is very strict.
mm.
So you can be very satisfied for 1 or 2 months. Oh, I am longlisted, I am longlisted. That means nothing. So 2 months after, you'll get to know that you will receive a score back that out of the commitment scoring part. So out
Yeah.
of 20 in endocrine and diabetes, if you scored 4 out of 20 or 0 out of 20, so there are scores like they can score 0,
Mm,
2, or 10. So out
mm,
of 10, they can only score either full marks 10, or 2 out of 10, or 0 out of 10. So
gosh.
no commitment 0, some commitment 2 out of 10,
Yeah.
and full commitment 10 out of 10. So if you just score 0 or 2, and there are two panels together, so scoring 10 and 10, so you can be scored 0 out of 20, or you can be scored 2 or 4 out of 20 even. So
Right.
then lots of people just, only few people get shortlisted. So that's where it gets very difficult to get shortlisted and to get the interview calls. And the
Right.
most difficult part is the interview itself
Mm.
in ST4, by saying that you not only have to pass what we call appointable. So you go through your interview, all stations, and then you're scored if appointable or not. Appointable, just in simple language, means you pass the interview or not. So if you're appointable, you still cannot make it. So it all depends on how many slots in the whole UK. So um, so in this time I applied ST4. There were 58 slots in diabetes endocrine, which they cut down from 110 comparing to last year. So every
Mm.
year is very variable. Round one, the slots. So this year they just halved the slots from over 100 to 58.
Wow.
So it's very difficult. Like over 200 people pass the interview, so they are ready for endocrine job, but only the top 58 they got the job.
Wow.
So so that's why it's the most difficult part. Just like 1 or 2 marks in the interview can make the whole difference in ranking.
Wow. Yeah, wow. That's quite fascinating. So, you've already mentioned that the app interview is probably the most difficult part. How was your experience? What are the resources that you used to prepare? Did you just focus on maybe online resources or books, or did you do mocks? What was your approach overall?
I think the most important part of the interview is that you have to look good. So it's not about the knowledge. Like everyone who is sitting the interview, they know the answers. So everyone knows the clinical scenarios, how to answer. It's all about, it's a very short interview, like 20 minutes and 20 minutes with two different panels, like total 40 minutes. So in 20 minutes you are being judged, I think, not more than your clinical experience or clinical skills. You are more judged about the person who is taking the interview. The interviewer has to feel like that you are senior enough, like you have to sound like you are talking at a senior level, and at the same time, uh, you should sound like a good colleague to work with,
Mm.
and that you are not. So the way you should talk, it shouldn't sound like that you are rehearsed in a way that you are just uttering the words. It's coming from you, that you mean it, you love the specialty, and you have to show that by the words, or by your body language. You have to show your love or passion towards the specialty. It's all about selling yourself. So if you are introvert, it's very difficult. So by saying that, I had my own approach to prepare myself. So what I call mirror approach. So so I was just recording myself, and I was in front of the mirror, and I had multiple video recordings. I was seeing myself after recording myself, that is it sounding fake or looking fake, or it is sounding real or genuine from the heart, or whatever. So it's all about how you deliver yourself, because everyone would tell the same thing, but you have to tell something that connects each other, like you are connecting with the consultant, and the consultant, just a first impression. And I think that's the most important part in terms of preparing the interviews. I had few partners to I mean, we just prepared together. And what else I can recommend, that I mean, my many of my colleagues have gone through some online courses, which I didn't. uh,
Mm.
I I so just because I have not gone through that, I can't say anything particular. But their optimize is quite popular in the ST4 level. Optimize interviews skills course. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything further about that.
That's completely fine, thank you. So it's a great suggestion that recording yourself or because we are generally our worst critiques in most cases. So you can really scrutinize what are the things that you can do better next time. And practicing with others, that's also great. So because you did not utilize any specific resources, and then the clinical questions or clinical knowledge can be vast. How did you sort of optimize your preparation
Hmm.
with in terms of the clinical scenarios?
Yeah, so
Then we'll
so
come to
this
management.
so to understand that the interview itself divided into four parts. Two of them are clinical scenarios. So one related to diabetes and one related to endocrine, and two other are like non-clinical stations. So one is like how you are suitable as a registrar, and the last one is your portfolio, like how much you are committed to the specialty. So I have prepped myself on the clinical. So the thing I've told before, it is about the non-clinical aspect, that how I prep myself.
Yeah.
But in the clinical aspect, I have gone through a lot. Like I have gone through all the society guidelines. So when I prepping for the endocrinology scenarios, the best advice was given by all previous STs. So who are already in ST4, ST5, ST6, I talked to them, and then I had an impression of the previous scenarios. Then I had a mind that these are the common scenarios, and then I went through. My main clinical source was Oxford Handbook of Endocrinology and Diabetes pocket book, and but my main also the society guidelines were extremely helpful. So that was the clinical aspect wise, yeah, my preparations.
Amazing. Okay. And for management as well, was there, I think people recommend a certain SD3 or SD4 book,
Oh
that
yeah.
for some reason no one can name the book, but
Yeah,
everyone knows
yeah.
that it's
So
the
I have gone through that book. Sorry, I forgot to, I was just remembering that there's something I wanted to tell, but I'm forgetting. So this is the book I went through. This is the book. So it's extremely popular book. So the title is a comprehensive guideline to all interviews, ST, IMTs, and so the best part of this book is that you if you just um
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no
Uh,
worries. So the book is not about remembering things. The book is that particular book. If you just go through, you'll understand the interviewer's agenda. So the person that you're giving, sitting on the other side, what they're expecting. So the book comes with lots of examples, like good examples, bad examples, and how does it sound like. So it's a good book just to have an bird's eye view, just to have a read over and again. It's not to remember things, it's just to have an impression that how one answer can stand out from many answers, and which are the good sounding like and which are the bad sounding like. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's very helpful because sometimes we might have, in terms of management or preparing questions related to management, as doctors, we generally don't bother. We don't have the time. So someone might want to just cram the answers, but the way you describe that, maybe the best utilization of this book would be to gain that bird's eye view rather than cramming the answers of a scenario. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. So, uh, I'm just going to switch the context a little bit. It's my question, if you will. So you've been here, you've been in the UK since 2021, and you joined ST4 in 2025, and you did junior clinical fellow job and then senior clinical fellow job. You did not choose IMT. Why did you not choose IMT?
That's a great question. Why I did not choose IMT? So, so choosing IMT or not, it all comes down to your own personal circumstances. So it comes down to whether you are open to change locations, whether you want to stay in the same area, whether you are near. So in my mind, I was looking for something rotational. So
Mm,
I had the job of like a four rotations. So I rotated from stroke to geriatrics, to cardiology, to acute medicine, and my next one was due for respiratory SHO or junior clinical fellow if I didn't opt for senior clinical fellow. So that rotational rota was quite mirroring the IMT 1 and 2. Like in IMT 1 and 2 you go through rotations like 4 or 6 months. So I was already into IMT in my own mind that I'm going through different rotations, and I was not really
Yeah.
open to change locations that much as well. And so these two were the main factors, and I was already in my mind that I'm meeting the competencies, and I sitting with my supervisor and who is suggesting me that you are already having the geriatric rotations, you had the ITU back in Bangladesh, you already passed MRCP before coming, so in the interview panel you might sound like overkill of your skills and your experiences because you have passed your paces already. If you want to join IMT, it might be overkill. So rather just go for 1 year and apply next year, which I was about to, but then I found out it's a different ball game. Like it's a tick boxes, lots of
Right.
things. Then I was like, okay, let's take 12 months more and let's not apply at all because I don't have any cutoff scoring that much. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's really good. Yeah, now that I think about it, you did not have to go through that uncertainty that okay, I'll have to change 4 trusts in 2 years. You'll just get all the rotations in a single place. So that makes a lot of sense.
And
And the
also
other
family
question I think,
circumstances comes to play. Everyone's circumstance is different, not only from the work or clinical perspective. So I have 2 kids, my wife, so everyone's perspective, what they want. So you have to think of a whole spectrum, what the family wants, your work and personal life balance. And that was our
yeah,
decision. Sorry for the
great,
interruption.
great. No, no, that's absolutely fine. That was a very helpful nugget of information. And I think the next question would be, since you've had, a wealth of experience, if I can say it, in Bangladesh and in the NHS combined. Now that you're in ST4, some people ask about if you can get enhanced pay or if you still receive the salary at the same grade as the national grade, or do you get a bit of bonus? And if you do, what's the way to get that extra bit of help?
So it's a bit it's completely different. NHS England pay, NHS Scotland pay, they are completely different. By saying that,
Mm,
why they are different, ST4 level, Scotland is a banded program. So just like a 50% banding, when
mm,
so in whole UK there are two types of contract, like a banding contract, and then there is a old contract and new contract. So Scotland
yeah.
still training level with the 50% banding old contract.
Mm,
But unlike in NHS England, there is a fixed ST4 for everyone, like a
yeah.
fixed. But in Scotland, you have to show your all previous experiences. So how
Mm,
much you have worked post foundation, and then they accumulate all. I mean, they based on your evidences, then they just put you on a nodal point, and
ah,
then it's a
okay.
50% banding. And it's not like in
Oh,
England you get weekend one in what weekend out of our allowance. It doesn't work like that in Scotland. It's all about a gross basic and 50% banding based on all your previous experiences. In a
mm,
disguise, it works better for me because
yeah.
now I count myself NHS England, Scotland pay. I am very happy with NHS Scotland because they counted like 4 years experiences, like, and put me a higher nodal point. So that's a bit different, like NHS England and Scotland.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. And that probably also answers some of our audience's question that, okay, so there's England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. Why did you choose Scotland? Maybe you had obviously had your own set of reasons, but this might be a very good incentive to do that training program over
Hmm.
there because you'll get a quite significant financial boost
Yeah,
compared
they
to
call
maybe.
it pay protection. So in
Uh,
NHS Scotland, they call pay protection. Even if you are coming from a non-training background, like I, so if you have worked in England for few years as a clinical fellow. They take all your previous pay into account and they don't downgrade you. So they call pay protection.
Oh,
In
wow.
NHS Scotland, ST4. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's great. So there's a bit of advertisement about NHS Scotland here as well. So, I think we have sort of come to the end of our session. Thank you very much for your time. And it was honestly a really lovely, really chill conversation. And I personally got to know a lot of things. Or got the chance to look at a lot of things from a very different perspective. So thank you so much for that. If you had any ending remarks for our audience.
Yep. Um, now I work in Scotland. I never foreseen this that I was able to work in Scotland. So I can do some much more advertisement. Sometimes people don't have the right perception of Scotland, but Scotland in my specialty, they ranked second in the training satisfaction survey last year. So if you go to the National Training Satisfaction Survey, so my trust is called NHS Grampian, North Scotland. So the first one ranking in one of the London trust, and second one is Aberdeen, like my trust, which ranks 92% satisfaction survey. So I'm not going to detail what, all I'm saying that be open to your location. That's my advice. Don't think like, oh, I'm going out of England to Wales, Scotland, Ireland. That means my training would be different. Not really. So everywhere there is always a better, there might be a better training environment and more structural and like a more better relationship with TPD's supervisor, and you can have your ST4 ARCP portfolio signed off very easily. So this is what I have felt better. So I can only compare what I have worked before in London and now in Scotland, and I feel the training environment is much better only based on these two places. I'm not generalizing anything or advertising anything, but I love where I am right now. And thank you, everyone, Ima and everyone, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any questions from our audience, so we're just going to wrap this session up now. Once again, thanks to DMC Club UK for organizing this lovely Medcast for us, and Dr. Atikur, Dr. Nadia as well. And last but not least, thanks to our wonderful guest, Dr. Shoaib Sarwar, and all the best with your training, with the rest of your training, and take care.
You're most welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.